Hello and good afternoon, Xbox Nation. Welcome to this week's episode of X Vlog Live. I'm your host, Mr. BoomStick XL. And today, folks, I get to hang out with family. You know him as the General. I know him as Brother King David. King David, what's going on, brother? We have a lot to get into, particularly some spicy topics when we asked the question. Does Xbox have PlayStation on their heels?
Mm.
Some people will even dare say, do they have them on their knees? But we'll get into that. How you feeling?
Feel like I'm coughing to death. I was rushing in to get to the mic. Didn't grab my drink of water, but hopefully I'm fine. I got it in the next room. I'll grab it at some point in time. Yeah, we got some good topics today, and feeling a little bit better now that I can get my win back. But I was running. I told Boone, I said, I'm coming in hot. He was like, don't worry. I'm like, yeah, I am.
Oh man, well listen, bro, we're great. It's great to work with you as always. I had hit you up. I think it was Sunday. I was like, "Hey, I got an idea for a
Yeah.
Thursday show. What do you think?" And he's like, "Yeah, sign me up. Let's go." So I definitely appreciate you being here, folks. Listen, I want to open up with a topic that is, I think, relatively dear and true to both King and I on our hearts. A lot of people, as a matter of fact, I'd even dare say many people's hearts in the community. And that's talking about Phil Spencer.
Yep.
Obviously, he's going to close the biggest deal in tech history under the leadership of Xbox or Microsoft, head of Microsoft Gaming. Now, granted, he didn't do it alone. Obviously, there was a significant amount of help in the lawyer aspect of it, but we do know that Phil is the head dude in charge.
Yep.
And what he has shown the world is how important. And I say this, I said this on Twitter. I cannot overstate the importance of Phil Spencer moving forward for a multitude of reasons. Now, understand something. He's not a god. Okay. He is someone that is head of Microsoft Gaming. He is a human being just like us. He makes a whole lot of money that's well deserved. So I don't put him on any kind of a pedestal. I don't put any man on a pedestal other than my pops, who is my ultimate hero, and there's no greater man. Okay, but that's a personal thing. But I do want to really ground this conversation into what happened last Friday. That is Phil surprised the world by showing up in Las Vegas to an event that was for Final Fantasy. And in this event, he not only announced a renewed partnership with the newly appointed CEO of Square, which, by the way, only took a month to get here. He was appointed the new head of Square in June, and in July, here we are. We're having Phil Spencer come up on stage. It shocked a lot of people. Obviously, Ginger Prime, who, by the way, was a guest on Tuesday's show, completely was blown away. So much so that his clip of him getting excited and breaking down emotionally has over 1 million hits. And it's a well-deserved achievement because the guy is, when I tell you, really down to earth and fun to talk to. I love to see that kind of success. But I want to reel this back in, King, to what this ultimately means. Because I think, King, this is a power move. Now, if you would ask the humble man in Phil Dominus Maximus Aurelius Spencer, he would blush, he would laugh, he would giggle, and he would be taken aback by he doesn't feel that he has done or he should be held, to be heralded as anything other than just a gamer. And that's why we love him. But I think that outside of ABK, the power move here, folks, that I'm talking about is this newly or this renewed partnership with Square Enix that sets a tone and really takes the wind out of PlayStation, who has been known to just dominate Square Enix titles. And now that looks like that is going to come to an end. Now, I don't know when Final Fantasy 16 is ever going to get to Xbox, it will get to Xbox. I from what I understand, the contract is 2 years. So maybe at some point that is renegotiated. You know, Sony does their things. Does this open the door for Final Fantasy VII Remake finally? Because we know there's an Xbox version. It's on a hard drive somewhere. They just have to move it on to digital servers and you're ready to go. But the power move aspect, King, is really where I want to drive this point home, because what Phil Spencer ultimately has done with ABK, sewing up first party with Bethesda, making sure that the studios have proper leadership at Xbox Game Studios, and now the cherry on top of this Banana Boat Sunday is, of course, the Square Enix deal. This is a big deal. And I think ultimately what it does is it makes Phil Spencer the most important person in gaming right now. Now, can that change? Sure. Let's talk about it, King.
Well, first and foremost, I want to give Ginger Prime his flowers. I saw a lot of people going at his range of emotion.
Yeah.
For him even shedding a tear. You know, we grew up in a large, and the people that were going at him was mainly in our age bracket, which was kind of weird. But I get the toxic masculinity, this new term. I just call it stunted man growth. And we were stunted growing up. We had Archie Bunker, we had George Jefferson,
yes,
we had Ralph Cramden, and these guys male chauvinistic pigs.
Indeed.
Right?
Indeed.
And this is what we grew up with, and this is what we had raised us, because a lot of times we were in front of the television. So you never seen these men cry. You never seen these guys show emotion. All they were was stern and always pushing the macho man forward. And this man plays Final Fantasy 14, and he just wants everybody to get a chance to play this game. So they were at a Final Fantasy fan fest. See, what people don't see tea leaves lining up. So the fact that they were at a fan fest, which Microsoft started Fan Fest, and this is a Final Fantasy fan fest, and the lead designer of Final Fantasy 14 said, "Hey man, let's bring out my good friend Phil Spencer." And he came out like a wrestler. He came out. I'm expecting him to come out with the championship belt. And I was waiting for him to grab the microphone and go, "Well, you know something, Mean Gene?"
Oh my God, that is great. That is so WWF classic, bro.
That's what I was expecting, because they had the smoke and they had the lights, and he came out the tunnel, and I'm like, that's beautiful. So I'm trying to figure out what other games are coming. We know Final Fantasy 14 is coming, and it's a great MMO. A lot of people are talking about, oh, well, we're happy to pay for an old game. Well, shout out to Old Noah's Alex for schooling you dudes. The first 60 levels of the game, with the all expansions and stuff like that, is free. Right? So anyway you get a chance to play the game, it's going to be free for the first 60 levels. And if you don't like something by the time you reach 60 levels, then that's a problem with you. All right. But there's a whole bunch of different mages and classes that you can go to, that you can do another character for another 60 levels, do another character for another 60 levels. So to have this Final Fantasy, and a lot of people feel that this Final Fantasy is the one that ties all the Final Fantasies together. Right? To have this Final Fantasy, the one that skipped Xbox, that went straight to PlayStation, Phil is just going back and correcting wrongs. Right? And I thought being that the dossier was on the table when we watched the ABK deal, and the fact that Square themselves were, there was a folder with their information prevalent. So that means that these guys were looked at to be purchased. This was on the acquired to acquire list. All right. So how far in negotiations were they to have a dossier? You didn't see a dossier on anyone else.
Yep.
But Square. Now, Square removed the fluff. We all assumed that they were removing the fluff for Sony. But hear me out, people. Sony was getting the milk without buying the cow. Why the hell would they buy the cow? They were making exclusive deals with Sony without even having to purchase them. Send them a couple of money, get the hair and nails done, send them out. They didn't care. That was it. That was their deal. And they were getting all the new games. So again, I think in the beginning, Microsoft and Square, remember all that time when Square, all those games was landing, Kingdom Hearts and everything was landing on Xbox, and we were like, uh-oh, what's going on? And then there was talks of the Final Fantasy VII remake, and then the ABK thing happened. So when the ABK thing happens, they're like jilted at the altar. Excuse me. It was more to that. Microsoft went back to purchase. They raised the price. When they raised the price, Microsoft balked at the price that was raised because it was probably like close to double of the initial offer. There's no coincidence that the former CEO is out and a month later, the new CEO is more palatable with working with Microsoft. That's called a board move. When the board looks over and say, who cost us this money? Who cost us this partnership? Who cost us this level of being able to make games without worrying about the financial aspect? Who cost us this? And when all hands on deck point to one individual or one brain trust, then we have to get somebody that's a little bit more palatable in moving forward in this deal. So we let him go out with his head up, honorable, replace him, and then we can start this partnership. Microsoft and Square. I'm a highly visual person. The fact that they said, let's all hold hands and form a trifecta on the screen for you to see that this is unity. Everybody's going to take pictures. Everybody's going to see that this is a bond. There's a reason why you take pictures at a wedding when a union is being consummated. That was a consummation of a union. That was a binding agreement in front of everyone that was there. That was a binding agreement in front of individuals to let individuals know we will be working with each other in perpetuity going forward. Now, does that mean acquisition at this point right now? No. But I believe the first people that they're going to acquire is they're going to go pick up Square. And
that's what I'm thinking, dude. Like, man, oh man, if that happens, King.
Well, then they're going to double back down and pick up IO and Crystal D.
Yes,
they wanted to separate them in order to make the purchase a little bit more streamlined, right? Crystal D and IO is already working at Microsoft right now. All right, Embracer Group has lent them to special projects that they're working there now.
Yeah.
So Microsoft is trying to become the RPG kings.
Well,
not just Western.
Yeah, no, talk about, yeah, absolutely. I think you're onto something. I think when you think of Xbox, what Phil Spencer and company want to do is you'll think RPG, but not just region specific. I'm talking about a broad stroke RPG. That means JRPGs, that means Western RPGs, and everything in between.
But see, that's what Sony had.
Yeah,
like Sony before wasn't known as the dude bro shoot box. That's Xbox. All right, so they got that locked down. You got that with Halo, you got that with Gears, you have that with Doom, you have that with Fallout. You have the shooter box, and Call of Duty is going to show up there. Ultimate shooter box. RPGs. So now you have Blizzard, excuse me, Diablo. Then you have a ton of RPG studios that you have. And to add the ultimate RPG studio, which is Square, and to go right all the wrongs in the past. There's a ton of games that can come from Square once that marriage is consummated. And I believe that, Phil and the team at Xbox will ultimately live up to whatever the contracts are. He has been shown to be a man of his word, because what will look terrible on Square is if those contracts has language in it that it can't get to Microsoft, and they would void those contracts. You would bring dishonor on Square themselves.
Yep.
And that's not something that Microsoft is to build a great relationship. If you think you're going to get Sega by doing that, that's not going to happen.
Right.
Right. So what you would have to do is look at the letter of the contracts, stay true to the letter of the contracts, and then find a workaround. Now, maybe you can bring those games to PC Game Pass, right? With skipping the console market, but also have the game inside Game Pass in some form of capacity. And the fact that the PC Game Pass is actually the fastest growing portion of the
Yes.
Game Pass ecosystem, that will be a boon over there. So I feel that there's ways to go around it. There's ways to work those contracts. And then ultimately, when you do have conversations with Jim, you do have leadways like, hey, we have these contracts, and you do know that we're working on something else, and we have these games over here. Would you like to have one of these games? And of course, if Sony is actually listening, yeah, we would love to have one of well, those contracts you do have in place, there's letters there that doesn't allow us to have these old games. Now, these are old games. You don't need the first Final Fantasy remake and the second one there. These are older games. Let's release these games. Let's release 16. You already made that money, and let's get that over here, and then we can give you some new games that you're looking at, because we do have Elder Scrolls 6 that's about to drop. And wouldn't you like a part of that? Like, wouldn't you want to be in the know with this? So it's little things like that can give them leverage to release certain contracts, and it will be up to Sony to tear up said contracts. It would not be up to Square to do so, because that will be a breach of contract. But if Sony and Square and Microsoft will be the parent company, will come to an agreement to void said contracts, and then do issue new contracts for other games. It's stuff that can work. Microsoft will be in a position of power instead of being at a position of weakness. So I think Square is next. I think the letter of the tea leaves was there. Sega was in those paperworks. Pretty much a large amount of people was in the paperworks, but Bungie got picked up, and a couple of those other companies got picked up. But Square was the last folder that was there. It was the only folder that they showed.
Well, I can say this, and I'm glad you brought that up, because that was going to be the next point of the power move. We know for a fact, King, that Phil Spencer is not done.
No.
He is, first of all, Phil's probably got another 5 years worth of gas in the tank. I don't see him going anywhere anytime soon. He's about around our age. Like, I'm going to be 53, so I believe Phil's like 51 or 52.
Yeah.
So he's not ready to go anywhere anytime soon.
I think he's behind me. So if he's behind me, then he's 50. I think he's
Okay.
behind me.
Oh, so
Yeah.
okay. All right.
Yeah.
So there you go.
I'm
Maybe he's even
51,
a
so I
little bit
think he's
younger. Yeah.
behind me. Yeah.
I could say this. From a financial point of view, what they're doing with Sony isn't working. I mean, let's call a spade here, folks. The current numbers for Final Fantasy 16, which again, I really want to finite this point, King. It's literally one platform,
Yep.
not on PC, not on Xbox, certainly not Switch. It is on PlayStation 5, and that is it. PlayStation, to their credit, just announced a couple of days ago that they have surpassed selling, not shipping, selling 40 million PlayStation 5s. That is unbelievable numbers. You
Beautiful.
cannot argue it. If you don't like PlayStation for whatever reason, I hear you, but you cannot deny the fact that they know how to make hardware and they know how to sell it. They've sold 40 million consoles. That's huge. Where I start to say, okay, King, you and I, we're both businessmen. We like numbers. We can argue points. We can argue opinions. but we cannot argue the numbers.
Right.
The numbers simply, the numbers simply put, is that 3.5 million people bought Final Fantasy 16 versus 40 plus million consoles on the market. That's not good. I'm sorry to tell you. That is a poor 1-to-1. No matter how you slice the pie, no matter how great the game is, King, no matter how many critics say this is the greatest Final Fantasy, non-Final Fantasy game I've ever played, and all I've heard is good things. I can't wait to play it.
Right.
I still have a problem with Square, so I'm not going to support them until some big change comes. So I'm going to buy it from eBay and make sure that I'm not buying it new. I'm going to get a used copy.
It still got purchased though.
Yeah, no, it did. It was one of the 3.5 million, but I didn't buy it. I'm buying it secondhand. So that listen, it's what it allows me to sleep at night.
Even the fact that Square right now at this moment is actively working with Microsoft trying to fix their past, you still won't patron the company.
I have to see change in order for me to do that. I want to see further pushing of the envelope for inclusion, which I don't see with Square, and that's my personal biggest problem. And like I said, will I get there? Sure. I had a real beef with the way Activision was run, and now that Microsoft is going to take over, I don't have I'm expecting big change for the people that are working there that suffered under Bobby Kotick, that are still somewhat suffering under him, because he's still the leader of Activision until the deal is done and until they find a replacement, and then he will take his golden parachute and go. Again, it's a personal thing, folks. If you don't stand for anything, that's good on you. But for me, I'm very proud to say that I have a very high moral compass. And sometimes it's to a fault, but you know what? I'd rather be wrong that way. But King, we got to talk finances here when we talk about Square. There is something to be said about having a game. Final Fantasy 16 is a perfect example of that, and allowing that particular game to only sell, and I say under 4 million versus 20 million consoles. It's not a good ratio, and it's why. And again,
so you think the game was profitable?
I don't, and I'm going to tell you why, because we talked about this live on the air. The current price for the game being made now, I don't know if that's only production or that is packaging and shipping and advertising. $711 million to make Final Fantasy 16. So let's do the math, and I'll do it live on the air.
That'll get you fired.
Yeah, it sure absolutely will.
That'll get you fired. That'll get you terminated. Because then that decision that you've made, and that was a decision in his brain trust to place a game on a company to a platform, one platform, to a company that's essentially all but abandoned Japan. To see, that's my biggest problem, Boom, is the fact of the matter that Sony themselves has removed the parent company as far as studios out of Japan and made Europe their home base. All right. Jim went to Europe and cleaned up Europe, consolidated a lot of the studios that were there, but mainly Sony operates out of Europe. That's where their strongest base is, and it's not in Japan. And Jim did that very early on. I feel that there's some people that was on that board that felt that Sony heart wasn't in their motherland, and the fact that Microsoft is there fighting for their attention, fighting for their approval. I think some people see some honor in that and decide, you know what, let's give these guys a shot. Let's remove the old regime. I said that a long time ago with Nintendo. Nintendo's stuck in their ways with a lot of things. I want to see with the next console what they will bring to the table and how they would do stuff different. But I think the old metrics is what's dooming this game. The old metrics would be point of sale. Point of sale is a good old metric, and it sells. not in this age. In this age, point of sale is just one avenue. That was one avenue we had before we had internet and digital gaming came out. So when digital gaming came out, that you capitalized on the lazy aspect of the consumer. The lazy
Yes.
aspect of the consumer allowed the games to be purchased. Impulse buys happen every day. And when you don't give away cash or slide your credit card, or you're not physically inside a store, there's a dissociation, a detachment, if you will, from the actual purchase. So your mind doesn't conceive that you have actually made a transaction. All you're doing is receiving instant gratification. Because if you don't have to look at your bank account while stuff is happening, then the disassociation with said transaction exists. Now, that's just two aspects of sale.
Right.
You must diversify. If you're third party publisher, if you're third party publisher and you're only publishing on one platform, that makes you a first party publisher. So there lies the conundrum. You
Yes.
must diversify. You must put on PC. You must put on every format that that game can run in order to allow that game to get its maximum amount of sales. Why put an artificial ceiling on top of a game that costs you X amount of dollars, 700 and some odd million, is beyond me, right? You would not. Microsoft didn't do it with Halo Infinite. They made sure that that game was on PC, was on Xbox, was on Game Pass to make sure that that game sold as much as it possibly could. But for Square to put an artificial ceiling on the head of their probably number one game in their number one franchise at this point in time is ridiculous. And that will lead to termination, in my opinion, that you cornered yourself off and said, well, we will only deal with digital and point of sales with one platform at this point in time, without a PC avenue in sight, without another platform in sight. That right there is financial suicide. And this is the
Indeed.
reason why Square is always in the red.
Yes. Well, I just did the math. The math on let's and again, I'm being generous here, King. I said 4 million copies sold, which the report is 3.5, but I'm gonna suggest that word
Give
of
them extra
mouth.
500,000.
Uh, uh 300 million is what they made on 4 million copies sold. 300 million, which is less than half of the 711 million that it cost to make this game. That to me is a monster sized problem.
That's not the percentage that they pay Sony. That's not the percentage that they
Yep.
pay retailers, packaging, shipping. That's not the percentage there. So literally, and then you have to pay the employees. So you have to think about a factor in that's just the net. That's not, I mean, that's just the gross. That's not the net. They didn't take back that much. It's less than that.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's not a good metric. There's no doubt about it, which is why it is shocking to me that Sony themselves hasn't purchased Square Enix. But I think someone actually had said they made a point that Sony might not be able to be allowed in Japan to purchase Square Enix because of their dominant position. They have an 80+% market share. I don't know if in fact that's true or not, but
No.
then again, we don't even know if Sony has that kind of capital
They
to
just purchased a
invest
couple of studios.
in
They're
China, I
working
think.
within their budget. They just had the expenditures reduced by, I think it was like 15% or 5%, something like that. Something gross and negligent when it came to being in a battle. That's like somebody coming and tying your shoestrings together. Um, Sony doesn't have the capital to invest at this point in time. This is the reason why they're hoping some of the games or services hit, like one of those games or services hit, so they can get the recurring income in from said game. But I digress. When it comes back to Square, I don't think Sony's in position for it. And Square doesn't cost that much, but then you have to put in operating costs and you have to go across the boards and see if it's feasible for your company. Now, that question you have to ask yourself, if Sony's getting the milk, there's absolutely zero reason for them to
100%.
purchase them.
Yeah.
Now, they would not lose any sleep if Microsoft purchased them, because they understand that Microsoft will still allow Final Fantasy to be sold on PlayStation consoles. It would be ludicrous for you to think that they would remove that franchise from there. Well, no,
Yep.
what Microsoft would do would gain access to a whole slew, a library of games that weren't accessible to the Xbox platform. Does Sony care about that? No, I don't think they do, because they have said games.
Yeah.
So again, Microsoft purchasing them is a plus for Microsoft. Is it a minus for Sony? No, because Sony already has the games that everybody's looking for from Square anyway. So it just allows people that are on a Microsoft end of it, on the Xbox end of it, to experience games if they have no other avenue to do so. But Sony, it, it, it doesn't move the needle. You
Yeah.
understand? Like, as far as they still have some of the games exclusive. So what they lose some exclusive titles because Microsoft owns the platform. They're not able to play that card anymore. Okay, so what? You know, they still have their own homegrown franchises that Microsoft will never have, that they will be able to still leverage regardless to what. So when it comes to financial sense, do I spend 7 billion to remove games from a platform that I don't need to do that for, because it doesn't affect my bottom line if they had said games? It doesn't. So I will take that 7 bill and I will make sure that that 7 billion goes to something that is a little bit more substantial for me, as far as getting real exclusives that cannot go anywhere, that can only be played on the PlayStation platform. Go out and get studios that are young and upcoming. Build
Yep.
build a stable, bolster your stable. No, I would not spend 7 billion on something that I can acquire regardless to what. No, that's bad business practice, and I know Jim doesn't deal in that. So no, that's the reason why they never purchased Square. And I see every Sony fanboy talking about when they purchase Square. There's no incentive to do so.
Right.
It doesn't make financial sense. And there's a lot of guys talking off of emotion. Oh, Microsoft got ABK. We need to do something. If you notice, the biggest game that was mentioned there will still be on your platform.
Yep.
All Microsoft did was make sure that you can't do none of the Fugazi stuff anymore.
That's right. No, no, it's a fantastic point, and ultimately, you know, they need a presence in Japan.
Yeah.
This would be a good, I would even say, great way to get that presence with the acquisition of Square Enix. There's also something to be said about the fact that a lot of people don't know this, King. Square Enix, their mobile division makes bank.
Yep.
Right? I mean, it makes bank. So, I mean, wow, what a coinky dink. They just happen to own King. They just happen to want to be moving in the direction of mobile being a big aspect. And when you can combine something like Sega's Rovio potentially,
Mm-hmm.
or Square Enix's mobile division with your current mobile division, which is King and has Candy Crush, and you go to put this mobile app that's going to be where you get one place. It's the Xbox mobile app. You get everything there and in one place. It's going to be a big deal. And that kind of investment that Microsoft is making ultimately will be turned around and used for, it's put back into the company in acquisitions,
Well, that's
in
that 8
development.
billion. That's the 8
Yes.
billion that Phil Dominus Maximus Aurelius Spencer was talking about. That's the 8 billion that everybody laughed at. That's the 8 billion that everybody thought it was unattainable, because the highest ceiling that the, console market has made was what, 130,
Yeah.
130 million.
Yeah.
So how the hell are you going to go from 130 million, which is the ceiling, and Sony has been hitting that pretty regularly,
Yep.
to 8 billion? Well, when they were talking numbers, they weren't talking straight directly out the cooler. What they was talking numbers straight from the cell phone aspect of it. Everybody walks around with one of these. Everybody has one of these. And these things are super powerful. I could never believe that I will be walking around with something this powerful in my hand. This is way powerful than my Voodoo 3DFX PC that I had back in the day, my Hewlett Packard, or my IBM or my Apple. This is way more powerful than those PCs. And now that I have that in the power of my hand, wherever I'm at, I can turn it into a gaming session. And I do,
Yeah.
regardless of what, I never let time affect me because I'm too busy being distracted by what's the next move that I got in Royal Flush or something like that. So um people have to realize that the real game plan here has always been king. The real game plan in acquiring Square is the mobile unit. The real game plan in acquiring Sega is the mobile unit because Microsoft is trying to reach those 8 billion customers, not just the console sales. So when you look at it, the dichotomy in this situation is you have Sony with a different philosophy from Microsoft. When Microsoft said that Sony was never a competitor, Microsoft is doing things at a fundamental ground-based level to try to change gaming in the way that dictates
Yes.
against Google and the rest of them, against Apple, against these big trillion-dollar companies. Sony is not in that stratosphere, not in that ecosystem. What
Nope.
Sony is worrying about is 40 million consoles sold. So, like what Microsoft is thinking about, well, when we turn over games with gold inside Game Pass, that automatically boosts us up to like 60, 70 million. Those numbers going to a different company as far as acquisition changes the conversation,
Yeah.
right? So you're looking at 60, 70 million. That's the platform. Game Pass is the platform. So console sales is probably redundant when you're trying to turn this into a walking console.
Yes.
This removes the conversation from you. So okay, a lot of dudes like to push numbers, and the numbers that you are looking at are wrong numbers. Because again, I always tell people, well, Sony sold 40 million. How many million did you buy? Don't bring up those numbers if you are a point of sale of 1, right? So your
Yes.
point of sale of 1, cool. Let's
Yep.
worry about that, right? So everybody wants to always be included. I don't ever hear anybody talking about the mobile apps that's on their phone. If you have an Apple phone, you have a Samsung phone, whatever, Google phone, we pretty much play the same apps, right? So I can play Royal Flush on this and I can play it against Boom. That's where it happens. That's where the true cross play becomes. That's
Yes.
when the synergy starts to happen. What Microsoft has learned a long time ago is this app being where it's accessible at a touch of a dime. Remember, I told you the disassociation with purchasing. That's where everything lies at. So when you're playing these games and you reached your limit, or you was on a roll and you ran out of moves, and they said to gain more moves, you pay $1.99. Oh, okay. Let me pay $1.99 to get a couple of more moves so I can get out of this avenue. Point of sale. You do not directly see any cash leaving your hands. That still happens. Now think about it. If it's 80 billion people, and you say, let's say out of those 8 billion people, out of those 8 billion people, let's say 1 billion has that app. Now, out of that 1 billion that has that app, let's just say 400 million make one purchase of $2.
Okay.
We're at a tipping point of a cash flow that sends Microsoft screaming past Google, screaming past Apple.
Yep.
That's where the numbers is. That's what we're trying to get to. Well, not me, them. Sony isn't looking at it. And by the time Sony picks their head up out the sand, that's when it's too late. That's why I say you'll be an app in the Microsoft store because your eyes is on a different prize. While when this guy said 8 billion, you couldn't fathom it. 8 billion consoles will never be sold. You're goofy behind and understand the metrics behind it and the avenues in which he was going
Well,
to
the
use to get
question
there.
becomes, what's a console? Because
Sure.
that's the conundrum. What is a console to you? Is it the
Hmm.
box in front of your TV? Oh, okay. but that's old school.
Yeah.
This is a console.
Yes.
The ROG Ally is a console. The Steam Deck is a console.
More
So,
powerful than the console that you got in the house.
indeed it is. Indeed it is. Well, listen, this has been a dynamite start to the conversation. We're going to get into whether or not now we believe Sony is on their heels. And I believe that they are. But before we get into that, I want to catch up on Super Chats. But before I get to the Super Chats, I must address some stupidity in the chat. Now, this comes the way of Xcoin, who I usually say hello to, and I'm quite insulted by this comment. He says, Boom, being a woke person will not help you. First of all, what the F does that even mean? Because if you're asking, being woke in what way? Having a moral compass, putting people in front of the conversation, that's being woke? Then you're an idiot, dude. Like, straight up, why are you even here? Like, that is just blatant stupidity. And I take tremendous offense to that. Woke.
Boom.
That's ridiculous.
It's a trigger word for a lot of people when it comes to certain things. But see, what I've noticed, it's a deflection when you don't agree with people, right? He will want you to buy Final Fantasy. So the fact that you morally say, I'm not going to do X, Y, and Z because of business practices, it's your money. You do it whatever you want with your money, how you want to do it, why you want to do it. And you, Boom, and I grew up in a time where being an individual meant everything.
Hell yeah.
Right? The first day of school, you made sure that you got the best outfit you got. You didn't go and coordinate with your buddies. Hey, today we all gonna wear white Air Force Ones and we're gonna wear this. And we didn't all go out to go get the same belt buckle. It was about individuality. What I'm noticing is now there are less leaders and more followers, and they like to blend in, right? And I get to say this to you, X coin or whatever coin. Never begrudge a man for having morals and standing on something. Boom said something that maybe went over your head. If you don't stand for something, you fall for everything.
Yep.
All right. And that's not being woke. That's just having a moral a compass in your life. And that's something that you're going to need going forward. As a police officer, if Boom didn't stand for justice, security, freedom of speech, all that stuff that went into his oath, if he didn't believe in that, then he would be a dirty, corrupt cop that did not make it. All right. So the fact that he does have that high moral compass, be happy that that individual was a police officer and he would have listened to you and gave you a chance, opposed to, being on the other side of the fence. But remember, it's always better to be a leader than a follower, and never begrudge somebody for their opinion and their stance. Try to empathize and see where they're going with it. And if you do not agree, the best thing you can do is say nothing.
Yep. Pops always used to say, Craig, if you don't got nothing nice to say, don't say it at all. Straight up. So listen, if you're offended, that makes two of us. I don't know what to tell you. I step off.
I'm sorry.
It's the best thing I got for you.
Boom is not the way that the left and the right uses that word woke. It used to mean something before. Woke used to mean, remember when Neo came out of the Matrix?
Yes.
And he finally saw the world for what the world was. That's woke, people. That's waking up from the veil that's covering your face. Any other way that you're trying to use the word is on you. But woke means waking up from the dreamlike state that you're in, being fooled and lied to see the world for truly what it is.
Well, listen, look, at the end of the day, have your opinion. Don't try and insult me live on my show, because I'm just going to ban you straight up. Obviously, if you make comments like that, then you don't care about me as a person. So why should I care about you? End of story. That is the way it's going to go. But I do want to catch up on Super Chats, King. We have a lot
Let's
of
go.
them.
Let's
The
get
first
it.
one of the day comes the way of Jay Rambert, good friend of the program. He says, salute to the king. Indeed, Jay Rambert. Welcome back. And thank you so much for the $2 Super Chat. Drawn TJ. I greedy Drawn TJ because he wants everyone. Drops a very generous $5 Super Chat and says, I say, look, here we go. I say, buy Sega next year, and then in 2025 buy Square Enix, and then buy 50% stake in Take-Two. I love it. This man's got money to burn. Sith Lord drops a very generous $2 Super Chat and says, it's my favorite two gentlemen making my Thursday. Brother, that's very kind of you to say. Thank you for the generosity. And of course, Sith Lord, thank you for all the incredible channel support. Drawn TJ drops a very generous additional $2 Super Chat. Says, everyone hit the like button. Hi, King David. Hello, Boom. Hello to you, Drawn TJ. Thank you so much for being here. And someone that we talk to pretty much every day of the week, King David, Eli Slomovich drops a very generous $10. And so it's $10 Super Chat all the way from Israel, folks, all the way to the other side of the world. He says, cheers, brothers. Always fun to see you two discussing gaming. This is, and take this and have a great weekend. Boom. Brother, thank you so much for the generosity and the kind words. Stuffed Sean, who's been a channel member for 3 months, says this. We got at least 4 hours of Boom today. Indeed, I'm going to be a guest on Box and Burgers show at 2 p.m., but I'm only going to stay until about 3 and change because I got to pick up Mrs. Boom. So they get me for like an hour and 15. And he says, it must, see, now and on Box and Burger show, it must be the ILP King David influence. Hashtag advance the line. Hashtag free Square Enix. I love it. Web Dave drops a very generous $2 Super Chat and says, King has spoken. Let it be written. Let it be done. I love it. Dragon Heart Yobi, generous friend of the program. That is our brother right there. He drops a very generous $10 Super Chat and says, hashtag peace, love, and life to Boom. And special shout out to my guy, King David. You two gentlemen are changing the game. That's very kind of you to say. Keep up the positive pressure. King, always remember you are the one of the chosen. Keep shining. I love it, brother. That is high praise. Thank you so much for that, Yobi. Mandingo McThicken drops a very generous $2 Super Chat and says, how nice, Boom. Black Gandalf is here today. Oh, my goodness. Oh, my. Thank you so much for the Super Chat, brother, and the laugh. Highlander 001 drops a very generous $2 Super Chat and says, the ROI was terrible in Final Fantasy 16 for Square. Yeah, it really was. Absolutely. I mean, if they made a third back to the company as considered profit, that's probably even a stretch.
Yeah.
When you consider that they spent $311 million to make this game, it's
you said 300. I thought you said 7.
No. I'm sorry. It's $711 million. Yeah, that's what it cost. Yeah, that's that is what has been reported. That is what I read directly from Weekdown reported that $711
and that's too rich for Sony blood. Sony is crying right now for $100 million and some change on games.
$200 million games hurting Sony right now. Yeah, so $711
they're not
million
doing those games. They're not doing that.
Would bankrupt them. Simon Brandy drops a very generous £5 Super Chat and says, here in the UK, PlayStation 5 prices got cut by $75 for 2 weeks. Does Xbox respond? I'm hoping Starfield bundles and discless Series X later this year. Thoughts? I did hear about the sale, and PlayStation 5's skyrocketed for that obviously that 2-week period in the UK, and of course $75 off. Why wouldn't you take advantage, especially if you've been hunting a PlayStation 5? And a PlayStation 5 is quite a great system. I use it specifically for exclusives, and that's fine.
I use it as a dust buster and a leg warmer.
You know what's funny? I say this in jest, and I mean it. The last 3 times I turned on my PlayStation 5, and I'm not being disrespectful, is when I was dusting, bro. Straight up, like I was dusting, and I was like, boop, boop, like, God damn it, I gotta shut it off again. You know,
let me answer his question, because one, you're not gonna get a discless Series X. That's not happening. All right, so let that go. That's not happening this year. And the other thing that he asked for, Boom. Oh, if Microsoft was going to chase those prices, so you can get the Starfield bundle. No, go to Game Pass and they have that dollar deal thing going on,
Yep.
and there you go. Or if not, you already got Game Pass, you paid nothing. And then if you want to put stickers on your box, go get a custom sticker and
Yes.
sticker up your console. Let's look at ways to save money and not spend money. All right. If you don't have a console and you see a sale, run out and get it. Microsoft just had a console, $50 off on the Series X. People ran out, it's out of stock. Right. So if you don't have a console and you need it, go get it. Stop looking for new reasons to spend money.
Yeah. No, it's a fantastic point. Listen, um, if you are going to play Starfield through Game Pass, you can buy the $30 expansion that
That's it.
gets you day and date, gets you early access.
Yep.
$30. There you go. You've already spent your money on your subscription, whether you
Boom
pay
shakalaka.
monthly or whatever. I mean, yeah. Reggie Mobile 9, our very good friend King David, he said, "Shout out to Boom and King. King, you killed that woke explanation. Very accurate. Thank
Thank
you
you,
so
sir.
much for that." Pat F, who's been become a channel member recently. Pat, brother, thank you so much for joining us. They say this after dropping a $5 super chat. Shout out to King David. It was you and ILP that led me to this channel.
Wow.
You, both of you men are stand up, brother. That's very kind of you to
Thank you.
say. And yes, I mean that's. I mean, isn't that the whole point of having this family bond,
Yep.
not only with the community but within content creation? I mean, listen, I would give up subs of my own to push Randall Thor past 100K.
Yep.
Not because I owe Rand anything. That I love Randall Thor, and I want to see that man who has worked incredibly hard hit that milestone. So if I could take subs from me to give it to him in a second, not even thinking about it. But one of the things that I love about this community of content creators, King, that King and I are a part of, you look to the Infinite Umbras and the Web Daves and the Everborn Sagas and Keasantes, and then you start looking at the podcasts that the Xbox Two. You got
Mm-hmm.
the Xbox Infinite podcast on Fridays. You have the Iron Lord podcast. You got Slow Mo and his podcast. So we all are push. And that's what I love about it. We all push everyone to everyone's content because everyone should be heard. I think
Yep.
that's the most important thing, and that's what I love about being a part of this community. And that's a fantastic. Thank you so much for the super chat, but more importantly, thank you for the kind words. And Whole Grain Bread drops a very generous $2 super chat and says, "Did King take Kid Smooth's Xbox card?" I
Yeah.
mean, yeah, I
Yeah.
saw a little bit of that on on the socials. I just sit back and listen. Kid Smooth will eventually come back to green. He's gonna
No,
do
that
his
was just
thing.
a hot take. He just had a hot take that he thought made sense at the time that didn't make sense in the long
I
run.
think the way he explained it, because I listened to it, I think
Yeah.
that people didn't understand what he was. He didn't mean right now. He
Right.
meant when Microsoft was on the ropes, they should have sold, but it was blown out of
No.
proportion. Kid Smooth's a good dude, man. Don't
Yeah.
don't mess with that guy.
I
He's
love I love messing with him because they're talking about the pictures I got with him in his underwear.
when you guys are dressed up as superheroes.
Yeah, when he was what is it, Green
I
Lantern,
think it was Green
him and his
Lantern, and
boy.
the other person
Yeah,
was Flash.
and he had the underoos on.
So listen, let's bring this back in. Let's reel this back in, King. As we'll go for another 10 or 15 minutes, and we'll get everyone out of here. I do want to push the envelope on this. Sony on their heels, and
Yeah.
I honestly believe that is in fact the case. And here's why. Let me paint the picture for you, folks. The reason why I believe that Sony's on their heels is post FTC losing publicly multiple times and embarrassed, right? The CMA calling 33 minutes after the FTC lost, and Microsoft said, "Let's get a deal done." That's going to be done by the end of August. The deal's it's gonna get signed. It's gonna be put into law, and that's the end of the story. But post all of this happening, what has Sony done? Sony signed a 10-year deal, right? Now, we don't know the specifics of the 10-year deal other than they're going to get parity, they're going to get Call of Duty. They turned down because of the price to get Call of Duty day and date into their own service. That's like Game Pass. They said no. Why? The price. Since then, Jim Ryan has been nowhere to be found. You can't. He's like Carmen San Diego, nowhere to be found. You haven't heard boo from Sony. As a matter of fact, we just learned that they're skipping one of the biggest and most attended shows on the planet in Gamescom. Nowhere to be found. They're not showing Spider-Man outside of what we saw at, which was a great reveal at Comic-Con. Obviously we got a chance to see more information on who's going to be Venom, and what that game is going to be. And Spider-Man 2 is going to be amazing, no pun intended. But King David, I mean, when you look at the switches that are being hit by Xbox right now, and of course, if you're an OG, you know what hitting switch is all about. It's one of my favorite hip hop songs from way back in the days. You have to be old like me to appreciate it. Right now, Microsoft, specifically Xbox, and Phil Spencer and team, they're hitting on all cylinders. There's just no doubt about it. Game Pass is growing left, right, and center. They're getting games in there. We're on the cusp, King, of the biggest RPG to be released in what, a decade at least, with Starfield, Xbox and PC exclusive, day one into Xbox Game Pass. We see two companies going in opposite directions. Microsoft showed in June their dominance in the single player #just1 type of games that Cognito, myself, and you have been asking for. We know that they're already the king of Western RPGs. They're the king of racers, right? And on top of that, they have all of this happening, and it starts this September. Sony's on a decline. Now, granted, they're selling consoles, and that's fine, but they're on a decline when you talk about first party. If anyone wants to fight me on this, that's fine. But when you say Sony, most people are like, oh, it's first party bangers. They have one this year, King. Just one. And I'm not saying that Spider-Man isn't going to be a high 86, 87, even a 90 meta. It is the Symbonaut saga. It's going to be dope. There's no doubt about it. But we cannot take away from the fact that it's one game. It's coming out later this year, and that's all that Sony has. And if we're going based on what Sony showed us their roadmap, it doesn't really look that good. I mean, Factions was supposed to be the savior, right, for multiplayer, and that got canned. So let's talk about it. Are they on their heels right now?
Oh yeah, most definitely. Once Microsoft turned up the heat, I think Sony said, "Excuse me, let me get up out of this kitchen." The avalanche that we were expecting has started a little bit later than usual. And this is what I mean. We fully expected the avalanche to start with Redfall, and we got Hi-Fi Rush first, right?
Yeah.
And then Hi-Fi Rush started, and we were salivating in the thought prospect of Redfall being the next catalyst pushing it forward, right? We didn't know what Redfall was, and we were hoping that it was the Left 4 Dead that we didn't receive. And when they came out and was like, nah, it's not Left 4 Dead, it's a little bit more, and your guns is this, and it's like a kind of a looter shooter with perks with the guns, and you were like, oh, I'm intrigued, and everybody got different powers. Then we got Redfall, and then Redfall is exactly what Redfall is. Now I'm pretty sure that at some point in time they will go inside Redfall and fix up excuse me, all the little problems that Redfall did have. But you can never make a first impression twice, right? So whatever the first impression of Redfall is exactly where it was. And then, along the lines of that, Phil made some comments that was misconstrued. And then you started seeing the spiral of that. Well, what brought everybody back into the fray besides Hold the Line was Sony wetting the bed with their show. Everybody knew Spider-Man is coming out this year. I'm a huge Spider-Man fan. Spider-Man's right there. I got Spider-Man statues all over the place. I dare anybody tell me that they're a bigger Spider-Man fan. Spider-Man 2018 was my game of the year. Didn't win. I thought it was robbed. I thought it was cheated. But at the same time, in less than 5 years, we will have four Spider-Man games. Spider-Man, the
Yeah, Spider-Man
remake.
2018. You had so it'd be a total of 3 in 5 years.
Yeah, 3 and 5 years is the
Yeah.
remake and all that other stuff, and with
Yeah.
3 Peter Parker faces, different Peter Parker faces in this period of time. So you have all these games that are basically the same game, doing the same formula, getting same stuff, and you expect different results. Now you can fool somebody once, right? You can't fool them twice. That's just the reason why I don't believe that Ragnarok will sell the same as the 2018 God of War. I don't think that it would reach those numbers at the end of the day. Probably would, probably won't. I don't really care. But what I do say is, how many times are you going to go to the well? That's your only game for this year. All right. You had the Final Fantasy, but that's not your first party game. You got to start looking at your first party. Microsoft has Forza. This game is going to knock out anything that Gran Turismo has put forth in the last couple of years. Okay, so now that you have Forza coming out, you have Starfield, which is the largest IP and the most important IP Microsoft will have in years. Um, you have to realize Microsoft is not playing. Then you have Call of Duty. People, when Call of Duty come out, it would be a first party
King,
title.
you've been saying that how long? And folks, I want you to go back a couple of months. King David said Call of Duty 2023 would be in Game Pass. People called you crazy. Straight up, that is going to happen this November.
Yeah. And then you're going into next year. The first half of this, and I told you you was going to have Spider-Man all the way up until March, April. And then you'll probably get a first party title there, because Spider-Man is going to last this fiscal period. All right, this fiscal calendar year. You're going into it after Spider-Man. Spider-Man is an 8 to 12 hour game. You stretch it out as much as you want to stretch it out. That's up to you. But that's not gonna change. It's not gonna change it at all. It's going to be exactly what it's going to be. And here's the problem. Sony will not be able to keep pace with Microsoft. Microsoft will start continuing to drop AAA titles from first party studios, and these games will not be available on a console of your choice if your choice is Sony. It will only be available on Xbox and PC, and then, also with your whatchamacallit, with your cell phone. Dig this. Sony is banking heavy on a game with service. One of those games to hit. If any of those games miss on the initial reaction, does that form Sony to have trepidation and force Sony to say, we have to switch gears and go back to single player story driven narrative games, starting with Wolverine? Wolverine won't be here until 2025.
At least. Yeah.
So the whole of 2024, what is your lineup? You didn't get a roadmap. There's no roadmap. There's no direction. You had a piss poor show. You have one AAA title coming out for this rest of this fiscal year. What is Sony going to do when your main game, your main baseball game, your main sports game now is a day and date inside Game Pass? What is going to happen to your beloved console? Now, this is what I believe Microsoft is doing. I believe Microsoft is setting itself up to be number 2 by the end of 2025. That means leapfrogging past Nintendo, because Nintendo is going to have a reset in a second. Nintendo is about to release another Switch, and that Switch, we don't even know if it's going to be called Switch. We don't know what it's going to be called. We don't know if it's going to be back compatible. It might not be. And if it isn't back compatible to the Switch and it's just a new console coming straight away, then they're starting from ground zero. And Microsoft, the door is open for Microsoft to steal number 2 and stay in number 2, and eyes on the prize going for number 1. I told you by the end of this generation, Microsoft will supplant Sony, and Sony will become an app. Yes, they're on their heels, and I don't think they'll recover. I believe they're in a Pacquiao bout, and Pacquiao in his prime is throwing all these punches. And you can tell me, ain't King, Sonny's going to be Marquez, and Sonny's going to knock him out. Not if Pacquiao's on them steroids. Not going to happen there, buddy. And I think Microsoft got that big steroid boost by ABK. And it's lights out, buddy. You're going to look like De La Hoya. They're going to stop the fight at some point in time on you.
I mean, there's a lot to be said about the ABK deal. Listen, Call of Duty is a monster. Let's not, again, I don't play online for Call of Duty. It's just not my bag. The same way I will not play Final Fantasy 14. I'm just not an MMO guy. It's just not my bag. I'm excited for people who enjoy that genre, that enjoy that game, that are going to be able to play on their Xbox. I'm happy for gamers on the PlayStation, King, who are going to be able to experience new Call of Duties moving forward for the next decade. Why I think there is a changing of the guard isn't because of Call of Duty. It's for everything that's not Call of Duty. Folks, let's be real here. Okay? Hasbro has come out publicly, King, and said not only do we want the older Transformers, which were confirmed by Lulu Chang, that they did find them, they do have them, to be put on Game Pass. They want Xbox to make a Transformers game. Now, there is one in development that it was shown 7 months ago. I don't know if there's no platform announced for it, so that could very well be an exclusive. But when you start to see, King, they go into their back catalog and they drop all of these games, these older games that everyone says no one plays, into Xbox Game Pass, 20, 30 at a time, just bomb, one after another. And you start seeing people playing Singularity. You start seeing people playing Prototype. You start seeing people playing older Transformer games. And they're going to look at these metrics. They're going to say, oh, wait a second, we got something here. And it just so happens that the studios that made these games, I don't know, they own those already.
Yep.
And we're going to see sequels or reimagined. I mean, first of all, we always talk about.
You saw what Lulu Chang tweeted, right?
Yes.
All right. So she tweeted back at me because she made a tweet because somebody falsely and incorrectly stated that ABK couldn't find those older games, the Transformer games, because it was on a hard drive someplace and was lost somewhere. And she tweeted, "That's false information. We have those there here." And I tweeted at her, "Don't get me excited." And I send a picture of all my Transformer statues, which is Optimus Prime and Megatron. And then she tweeted back to me and said, "That's amazing." I say this: if they release those games, boom, when these guys get purchased, they release those games. There's nobody here that is a fan of any of those Hasbro or those Transformer games that are not going to at least try to see what it looks like with back compat at a higher resolution and 60 frames per second. It's just there's nobody here, and I'm a super Transformer fan.
Yeah. I mean, listen, there's my personal excitement is what these studios who have been stuck in the salt mines of Call of Duty for years
so bad
are now going to be able to do. The one thing that I think Phil Spencer really kind of puts the stake in the ground is we want to allow our studios to make what they want to make, because that ultimately makes a better game. He could say, I'm boss, you make said game, and they go make the game. That's not how he rolls. And I like that ideology. I mean, he could suggest, hey guys, what do you think about maybe doing Toys for Bob? How about, taking a stab at Banjo-Kazooie? How about Toys for Bob making a kart racer that is Xbox inspired, Xbox first party inspired? I mean, I've given them the idea. Could you imagine? And again, this is just my thoughts. Could you imagine if you're racing using Marcus Phoenix and you're on a Banjo level, or you're Banjo-Kazooie racing on the Halo ring, or you're driving through Fallout 76? It's literally $1 million idea. And what's great about these games is they don't have to sell 10 million copies to be profitable. They need to sell you on a subscription. They need to keep you paying. And if they can get all these games into the service that we all know and love of Xbox Game Pass Ultimate, they don't have to sell. Again, this is why Sony is in a bit of a pickle, because they are old guard. They are not willing to invest the way Microsoft has invested for years prior to where we are now. This is why they're on their heels.
Because they were
Because
winning though. Boom.
that,
Like I said, they were winning though. Like
yeah,
when you're winning, there's no reason for you to try to switch up the formula if the formula is a winning formula. It's just the opinion of it is their success has them looking at the brink, which is very hard to, if you're successful, to muck something up, right? You want to repeat, rinse and repeat, stay the course. You want to make sure that what you're doing that is highly successful, you want to continue it. So you use the same formula. I think what Sony has become is consistently used to that same formula and going back to the well with the same formula. Microsoft was forced to, no matter how much money they had, to change it up to give value to cater to the consumer. So we have a lot of stuff that is dedicated to the consumer due to the fact that Microsoft is in third place, that Microsoft, is the underdog, even though they financially are the heavyweight champions in this arena. Sony is the heavyweight champions in this arena. Sony has the level of success and cachet, and they were able to dictate pace. But that seems to be changing at this point in time, because this is when finances come in, and we're at a different time in our digital lives. Our digital lives is marrying. When people said stuff like Meta, a lot of people didn't understand it, right? That was the connections that will bind us, that will make us. Our cell phones will connect to our tablets, to our VR units, to our consoles, and all that information will be churning around in the cloud. When people was talking about the cloud, oh, they didn't really understand the concept, but Microsoft understood the concept with the Azure cloud infrastructure that they built all across the world. So they build these structures and allow it. Now, when they was putting consoles in these servers, individuals laughed. While Sony was selling consoles and Microsoft wasn't hitting those numbers, everybody laughed. Oh, you sold only 20 million, or you sold 30 million, and Sony is still outpacing you guys. You'll never catch up. Look at you, you're losers. You're paying all this money, $70 billion, and you're still losing. And then in the snap of a finger,
Thanos
overnight,
snap.
you became irrelevant.
Yeah,
and it's just like that. And that's how it's going to happen. Oh, I got to go to one point.
Yeah, sure.
The ABK deal. Phil was on a golf course when he got the call and went to go get the deal done. You got to understand, the man is on an absolute mission to bring you the best games to your console all over the place. But what people don't understand is, this is where they lost the ABK deal at. This is where the FTC lost. This is where the CMA lost. They tried to peg it down to a console. And it was the fact that Game Pass is the vehicle. And it took Phil, Dominus Maximus, Aurelius Spencer. It can only be done in this generation where that changed the finances. So when everybody was worrying about this is where the CMA had it right. The EU didn't understand it. This is where the CMA had it right. Hey, man, that cloud thing that you're doing over there, man, we're not trusting what you're doing over there in that cloud thing. We know that this can become a problem, because nobody cared about console, because that is not the wave. Y'all never went past 120 something million. So they know that you cannot be greater than, but this cloud thing can be something very detrimental. And if you get a foothold here, this can lock the doors on everybody else. So this is the only place that the CMA had it right, but they do have the language of it wrong. but this has been done under Phil Dominus Maximus, Aurelius Spencer. And when that 8 billion hit, I just want people to give him his flowers.
And it's going to be a very interesting story. Like I said, this year ultimately is going to probably be one of the greatest years in Xbox history.
Yeah.
And we're just getting started. Like I said, first party was supposed to start hitting with Redfall. That did not happen. No. Listen, like I said, I make no excuses for how that game came out. No, I also make no excuses that I beat it. I put 51 out for 50 plus hours into it. I quite enjoyed it. I really did. Was the game broken? Sure. Does it need should it have released this way? Absolutely not. Like I said before, and I will stand to this, or at least that game will be the last time you see that ever happen again. This was embarrassment for Xbox Game Studio. It was embarrassment for Bethesda, and even more so embarrassment for Phil Spencer, who was the head of Microsoft Gaming. I expect that never to happen again. If a game needs to be delayed, even if it's a year, like Starfield was, they will delay it, because ultimately, when they start hitting these cadence of all these games, they have all of these studios. They will have 36 studios in house by the time ABK is done, and that does not include the potential of bringing in Crystal D, IO Interactive, Asobo, Eidos Montreal, Avalanche Studios, Certain Affinity. I mean, the list just continues to keep going. These studios are going to be eventually coming home. They're working with them right now. And you can also add to that list People Can Fly, who just signed on to make an exclusive AAA game for Xbox.
I love their last game. Well, not their last game, but the game most notable for me. What was that game that
Oh, you're talking about the one with the punching?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and he had the girl with him,
Yes.
and oh man, what is that game name?
Hold on,
And
I'll get it. I'll look it up real quick.
That game was dope. Yeah, I remember them because of that. Hey, Boom is almost on it right now. But listen, guys, honestly, love talking shop with Boom. Boom is and I'm looking at the gameplay. Bulletstorm.
Yeah, absolutely. Fantastic game. I beat it originally when it came out in the 360, beat it again when they re-released it. Absolutely loved it. King David, let me catch up on these. Oh, you talk about Enslaved was by Ninja Theory. Enslaved was dope.
Enslaved was dope. Yeah, I'm talking about Bulletstorm. No, Enslaved was Ninja Theory. Bulletstorm was you pull them and you kick them.
Yeah. Yes. Okay, so let's see. Whole grain bread. We got House Flan. Drops a very generous $2 super chat and says, don't forget about Xbox Access program to get in. Yeah, absolutely. All access is still a thing. Yep. You can find it. I definitely get in on that. Drawn TJ drops a very generous additional $2 super chat and says, who does Sony sell to? It's probably Apple.
Netflix.
That's who I think can afford them.
Netflix.
Oscar Wheat drops a very generous $5 super chat and says, King and Boom are like Hall and Nash, the greatest. That's awesome. Obviously, he's I'm Hall because I'm the smaller man. He's definitely Keith Nash.
I would say Tango and Cash.
I like that. King, where did you get your statues from? I want to start a collection. He buys from everywhere.
I will tell you to. All right, so if you want to get to international statues, you will go to Spec Fiction and reach out to my boy Todd Johnson. He's the owner of Spec Fiction. If you want to you just want to start early on like McDonald's type of statues, and when I'm talking about McDonald's, I mean, entry drug type of statues, you go to sideshow.com. From there, you'll branch out to get XM Studio, and you get Prime 1. And then when you get a little versed in the situation, you will go and get customs. What I would say is DM me on Twitter if you're looking for cases and stuff like that, and how to. But KOS is live on Twitter now, so a lot of times when I'm going live, you can ask me questions there.
Nice, excellent. Well, listen, folks, thank you so much We had well over 600 people here today. That is amazing. Obviously, the channel is growing. And again, this is a show that I originally was going to sunset because we just weren't seeing the numbers. And it does take a lot to produce 5 shows per week. But now that you come out, this show is not going anywhere. We will continue the status quo of Monday through Friday, 5 different shows, 5 different panels. And of course, if you're finding the channel for the first time, I do ask that you consider subscribing. And of course, while you're here, folks, hit the like button. Trust me when I tell you, it helps more than you know. King David, let's sell your brand, brother. Talk about King of Statues. Talk
Oh
about
yeah.
the Iron Lords podcast. Talk about lordsofgaming.net, one of the premier places to get real journalism at its finest, brother. And where can people reach out to you on social media?
Well, you can reach out to me on Twitter, King David OTW. The same thing for my Gamer Pass, Gamer Tag on Xbox Game Pass. On PlayStation, I forgot. I think it's Game Pass Lover, Xbox Game Pass,
I
Xbox
love it.
Lover,
That's good
some,
stuff.
something crazy because they blocked me out of my account. Lordsofgaming.net. It's a wonderful site where we have a ton of reviews, writers doing their thing, giving you the best and brightest information that's going on inside gaming news today. Uh, Iron Lords podcast Sundays at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, where myself, Lord Cognito, Lord Sovereign, and Lord Attic, not in that order, usually have crazy banter going on and might find a good guest or so on there with us. Also, if you follow me on Twitter and you're a member of my Twitter page, I do live combat talk with Kings Saturdays at 10 p.m. This weekend we have Jake versus Nick, and it's gonna be Jake Paul versus Nick. It's gonna be crazy. I want to see it. I'm intrigued by it. It'll be something fun, So you go in there, you hit the Twitter page, and I know a lot of people was asking me, how the hell do we super chat? Well, there's a little monetization button right there. You hit that, send it straight to the Cash App. It works just like that. Also on Twitter, I do Twitter lives with KOS. That's King of the Statues, where I do comic book reads, I do statue unboxings, and I do a lot of live stuff. I'm gonna be probably doing a gym vlog with that. Boom is knee deep inside his health journey, looking fantastic, and he is inspiring everybody to follow suit. So between him and Cog, I'm squeezed between a rock and a hard place. Pause. And I need to get up and do what I'm supposed to be doing. So right now, my son and I, every day after work, because I take him with me to work, we go out to an open field, and we throw some frisbees around, and I take the weightlifting bands with us, and we do a lot of cardiovascular exercises out there for at least an hour or two, and we put in the deep work there. And I'm getting him trained up. He's 12 years old, and I want him to understand that health is wealth, his body is his temple, and to make sure that if you take care of your body will take care of you in your old age, so you don't have to be walking around on crutches and stuff like that, unless if you didn't have any major accidents. So eat right, live right, be right, and you'll do right later on in life. Thank you, Boom, so much, brother.
That could not have said it any better. Real quick, we have Maxie Coleman drops a very generous $5 super chat and says, Starfield not playable at Gamescom. Do you think there is something wrong? Absolutely not.
I can tell you.
Okay.
Oh, I can tell him. Okay, good. No. Yeah, Boom.
No, I was going to say, because Black Viking on Twitter, he has exploded on the scene as someone that you should be following. Love the work that he's doing with the community. He did this poll of Spider-Man 2, the game, versus interest in Starfield. I have the map in front of me. We're going to talk about it today. I'm going to move that conversation forward. We have an incredible panel tomorrow. There's nothing wrong with Starfield, folks. Starfield is going to hit like a sledgehammer. And what we saw was at least 6 months old at the reveal. Yeah. When you see this game running, it's going, as a matter of fact, Paris Lilly, great friend of this community, good friend of the show, great friend of the Iron Lords. has said what he was told while he was on Xcast has him more excited now than ever. And we'll talk about that tomorrow. So with Starfield is going to be a major conversation tomorrow. That is 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. But let's get to the one last super chat. Drawn TJ says, buy Wargaming. They own MechAssault. Yeah, I wouldn't buy a company just for the IP. I try and get the IP.
Just buy the IP.
Yeah, that's what I would say. But listen, ladies and gentlemen, a big thank you to all the amazing, consistent super chats and channel memberships that the channel gets. Again, they really do power the show and allow for Mrs. Boom and I to do the big giveaways. We do have 4 monster giveaways coming in the next couple of months, September, November, December, and whenever Stalker 2 is going to be released, we're giving away 15 copies that Mrs. Boom and I are going to buy at retail for its full price of $76.43 here in New Rochelle and give them to some lucky viewers because we're going to do a special Stalker 2 launch party, and we're gonna donate those 15 games to allow for, again, a mom and pop organization like Double Barrel Gaming giving back to a little bit of a bigger mom and pop organization in the studio that's bringing us Stalker 2, because obviously they've been displaced since the war with Ukraine and Russia, and now that they're in a new place with their families and people are safe and sound, we want to make sure that they get their 70%, which they will get from Microsoft. And it's our small way of just being able to give back a little bit. And of course, that all of those giveaways are going to equate in four giveaways, $3,500, folks. That's right, $3,500. We can't do that without the support. And of course, King David, thank you so much for joining us. And I'm going to close out the show with something that is incredibly important to me, folks. Hopefully one day be important to you, and that's something that my dad taught us when we were kids, and he would say, Craig, treat others how you want to be treated, and also it doesn't cost anything to be nice. You live by those rules, Craig, I can guarantee you're gonna have an awesome day. So take care, everyone. We'll see you next week on the newest episode of X Vlog Live.